All right, guys, before we move on to section B, I just wanted to show you this book again, my revision notes by Hodder Education, Amanda Barr. It goes quite nicely with your workbook. It is a revision book, but it gives you some exemplars responses throughout all of the exam. Here is a strong level 5 response, which shows evidence of using language for effect. The student is making choices about their use of language in order to make the writing interesting and convincing. They successfully connect with their audience. So I thought that this would be a good exemplar for you to have a look at. Now, it's only an extract, it's not the entire response, but it's a response to write a speech for your classmates persuading them of the benefits of part-time work. There is nothing more rewarding than earning your own money and being able to indulge yourself at the end of the working week. No more must I endure the humiliation of begging my parents for a loan only to be forced to clean the entire house in return for a few paltry pounds. No more must I miss out on epic adventures with friends due to an empty purse. No more must I save for months to be able to afford the latest must-have purchase. I can have it all. Did you know that on average UK parents spend a whopping £520 per month per teenager? Not in my house. What's more, a part-time job doesn't just offer financial freedom, it provides you with something much better. Something so precious that it is desired by employers the length and breadth of the country. I am, of course, speaking of experience. As we all know, it's a fiercely competitive world out there. According to Professor Kelly from Queen's University Belfast, employers are no longer simply seeking qualifications, they want to see more. They want to see young people gaining experience either in a paid or voluntary capacity. Heed this advice. A part-time job shows your ability to manage a demanding workload. It proves you have ambition and it equips you with the confidence to interact with people. Do yourself a favour, get a part-time job. You won't regret it. Okay, so nothing more rewarding. It's not quite a superlative, but it is exaggeration there. Okay, there's nothing more rewarding than earning your own money. Well, I'm sure that there are more things that are rewarding. However, this is also rewarding. Indulge yourself. Not just treat yourself, but the choice of vocabulary there, indulge, really is quite over the top and dramatic. No more must I endure the humiliation of begging my parents. Okay, so the vocabulary there again, very dramatic, over the top. Only to be forced to clean the entire house in return for a few paltry pounds. That alliteration there really emphasises how little money you receive in return for cleaning the entire house. But you're not just cleaning it, you're forced to clean it. So very dramatic language used right throughout. We also have a little bit of fact coming in. UK parents spend a whopping £520 per month per teenager. The use of statistic there with that number. Then we have, the emphasis on financial freedom, that use of alliteration again, emphasising how great it is to have a part-time job. Then we're talking about experience for the competitive workforce out there. This really is quite a good, strong level 5 response. It is making that connection with the audience, but the use of the language, there aren't that many statistics and there aren't that many facts being used in this response, but it's the use of the language, it's the dramatic language that I cannot emphasize enough. That use of ellipsis, the use of exclamation mark as well, punctuation for the more lengthy, detailed, descriptive sentences. The impacting sentences used throughout, you won't regret it. Heed this advice, a part-time job shows your ability to manage a demanding workload. These more detailed, emphasizing the key point that a part-time job is a great thing. Sentences are really, really important to building up your points in your response. Okay, we'll have a quick look at some other examples that we have in this booklet. So this booklet goes right the whole way through different types of responses that you might be able to give. For example, we've looked at speech already, but there's speech included in this as a response. We also have letters and articles as a response. So here is an article here. Okay, this is an extract that's been taken from a newspaper article published in the Daily Mail, and it's having a look just about uniform wars. So again, look at the language that's used. There isn't an awful lot of fact or statistic used throughout this article. However, the reader really impresses upon his opinion, and it's the way that he illustrates his opinion through the use of language that, you know, if this was a response in a GCSE English language paper, it would be getting an AA star grade. So if you aren't going to rely on fact, or you can't incorporate fact because you don't know that much information about the chosen topic on the exam paper, when expressing your opinion, if you can express it as dramatically and as effectively as possible through the use of exciting verbs, through the use of exciting language, dramatic language, over the top language, then you will be able to still achieve those marks. Okay, so uniform wars is the topic. Day 4 and the siege of Hartston Academy continues. So the use of siege there, even that imagery that's being created there of absolute warfare, chaos, and drama, basically. On one side, new headmaster Matthew Tate, who wants to raise standards by insisting that all pupils come to school correctly attired in their uniforms. No deviations, please. No trendy shoes, short skirts, trainers, overt jewellery, novelty knots and ties, and general scruffiness. On the other side, belligerent parents who object to what they see as a heavy-handed approach and are refusing to cooperate with the strict policy. On day 1, 50 pupils at his Kent school were sent home for being incorrectly dressed. On day 2, amid increasing uproar, another 20 were told to go home and get dressed properly. Many parents were livid. Tempers flared and voices were raised at the gates as teachers were accused of ruining the little darlings' first day at school. Pupils wept as mums and dads opted to stand and argue instead of accepting the new rules, or perhaps going to the school outfitters to make amends. I have to say, if anyone was setting a bad example, it was the mums and dads. I don't care if the new rules were complicated or open to interpretation. It's their responsibility to get their kids to school, on time, in the right gear. And railing against authority when they fail to do so helps no one, least of all themselves. So a few of the prompters here are: how does the heading hook the reader's interest in the article? Uniform wars. This is something we can all relate to. Okay, I'm sure you guys can all relate to it, having to wear a uniform to school. I can relate to it having to not wear a uniform to school. So we all have an opinion on uniform wars, and uniform wars is something that we all feel quite strongly about. We all feel strongly about whether we should be wearing a uniform or not. How does this abrupt opening help to engage the reader in the story? Day 4 and the siege of Hartston Academy continues. So that imagery is as I said, painting that picture in the reader's head that there's a complete standoff, almost like something that you might see in a history book or on a history documentary or historical type movie. What does this list tell the reader about the standards set by the new headmaster? No trendy shoes, short skirts, trainers, overt jewellery, novelty knots and ties, and general scruffiness. It's that word scruffiness. So the new headmaster is not going to tolerate scruffiness. And trendy shoes, short skirts, trainers, etc. These are all items of scruffiness, according to the author, according to the writer of this article. What impression of the parents does the writer convey through the adjective belligerent? So on the other side, belligerent parents who object to what they see as heavy-handed approach. So these parents are not abiding by the rules. These parents are blatantly going against what the rules are. What does this background information and statistics add to the story? So This background information, about 50 pupils were sent home on day 1 and then another 20 on day 2. It's setting for quite a dramatic piece, if you will, adding to the drama that you're already telling, or this writer is already telling throughout this article. That 70 children in the first 2 days of the return to school were sent home for not being dressed properly. So it's quite hard hitting. It's quite impacting. The use of numbers here are your statistics. Again, 50 pupils and then 20 pupils. So it adds to your point of view, or the writer's point of view in this case. It emphasises how right they are. It backs them up. Okay. How does this short sentence succeed in holding the reader's interest? So many parents were livid. The word livid there, it's not just many parents were annoyed, many parents were angry, those more softer adjectives, but this is livid. This is absolutely not one bit happy, absolutely disgusted, absolutely angry. So it's a little bit more dramatic, okay, and holds the reader's interest through that imagery there with the use of the word livid. Why has the writer waited until now to openly declare his opinion? So he says, and I don't care if the new rules were complicated or open to interpretation. So he waits until the last paragraph to actually offer his very strong opinion, because he's painted the picture of his opinion right up through the words like belligerent, scruffiness, the phrase like to get dressed properly, you know, accepting the new rules, or perhaps going to the school outfitters to make amends. You know, he's given his opinion. We've been aware of the writer's opinion throughout the previous paragraphs, but just in case, or just to reinforce it, just to emphasize it a little bit more, he's going to give it in black and white. I don't care if the new rules were complicated or open to interpretation. The final sentence then encourages us to agree with the writer, and railing against authority when they fail to do so helps no one, least of all themselves. This railing against authority, well, nobody wants to rail against authority. That's not what authority is about. Authority is there to be followed, to adhere to authority, and to obey authority. So this is encouraging us to agree with the writer's viewpoint there. Then we have examples of letters, and where in a formal letter the addresses and information goes. So your address always goes on the right hand corner. That's your address. That's the writer's address, always goes on the right hand corner with a space followed by the date. Okay, and then below the date on the right hand side, over to the left, we drop down a line, and it's the addressee, the person that we're writing to. Their address goes on the left hand side there below the date. So we have our address, the date below that on the right hand side, and then we move down a line and across the left, and that is the address of who we're writing to. So we'll just include the title of the person that we're writing to, and then we open our letter, dear Sir, Madam, or dear whoever you're writing to. Okay, and that is the formal letter layout. If we know the person's name that we are writing to, we would end with yours sincerely. If we do not know the person's name and we've used dear Sir, Madam, or to whom it may concern, we use yours faithfully. So when we know the person, it's yours sincerely. When we don't know the person, it's yours faithfully. Okay, so I think that we're ready to move on to Unit 1, Section B now. And we'll have a look at the next tasks there. Okay.